This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NWBA webinar series presented by ABC Medical. We are very excited to have you participating in tonight's session on registering as a NWBA team and member. Before we get started tonight, I want to share a few housekeeping items. Firstly, everyone attending is asked to please mute your mics during the presentation to reduce background noise for our presenters. Secondly, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box. We'll be monitoring this throughout the presentation, and we have time reserved at the end for questions and answers. Lastly, if you cannot stay for the entire presentation, don't worry. We'll provide a recording of tonight's session on the NWBA website, which a link will be provided at the end. Thank you to ABC Medical for being a longtime partner of the NWBA and presenting this webinar series. ABC Medical serves to provide NWBA members and more a comprehensive line of medical supplies. Thank you to ABC Medical for a continued support of the NWBA. Tonight, our presenters are Brandon McBean, Director of Membership Services and Programming for the NWBA, and Carrie Makadzinski, assistant coach and team representative for the Detroit Wheelchair Pistons, formerly known as the Detroit Diehards. Carrie is also a recreational therapist at the Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan and also the director of the RIM Foundation Adaptive Sports Program. Brandon, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Nia. Welcome, everyone. Just real quick, we want to go over what our session objectives are with tonight's webinar. There's a wider range of topics that we could cover in this realm of registering a team and athlete. However, hopefully, what we cover off tonight is some things that you can take away that are applicable for your team or your membership category. If we don't cover out on a topic, I can assure you we're probably going to educate you on where you can locate that information on our website or the resources that we have available or will provide to you to educate yourself and others. I will say, seeing a couple of names on here, it's good to see some team representatives on the call. And for those of you who maybe are still looking to confirm who your team representative is for this year or don't understand what a team representative role is, I will say that team representative role is probably the most critical administrative role in the NWBA. You're an ambassador for our sport and our organization within your team, your facility, your community. So it's really critical that we understand that there's the administrative side of our sport, which we're going to be covering off on tonight, sometimes can be seen as a distraction or a less ideal. But we want to help you to address those things so you can focus on the fun things, coaching, playing, and all of that, and officiating. Next slide. So before we get into it, I do want to just state that all of our policies and processes that we're going to cover tonight are kind of filtered down through our governance structure. And for those of you not familiar with it, real briefly, I'll go over is we have our NWBA bylaws, which are outline of our organization leadership structure and operations, which are approved by you, the NWBA members. But then we're also operate with our policies and procedures that are a little bit more detail of how we operate, and those are approved and governed by the NWBA Board of Directors. And then last but not least, we understand our organization has various divisions that are self-governing, and they have their own set of guidelines that they govern their operations, their level of play, and whatnot. and those are, again, by the membership of that division, decided on by them, and then, approved and administered by the executive committee of that division. Next slide. Really wanted to cover off on that last one and educate you all, because I think a lot of you, maybe new or old or anything, I want you to understand where your divisional information is on our website. And there's a wealth of it, including the contact information of your division leadership. We only want to share this as a lot of times once we get through registration and whatnot here, some of the parameters around it is governed by your division. And so you might reach out to me, myself, or a board member, or Tina, or anyone else within our leadership group. But a lot of times we do have to go back and speak with your division leadership. So really want to educate you all where you can find who your leaders are within your division, and encourage you to reach out and make sure you have their contact information as well. Because, one of the things we're definitely looking to do, and we continue to work and collaborate with division leadership as we educate them on all the things we're going to educate you on tonight. And they're well versed in it and likely can speak to it as well. And so you don't always have to grab a Brandon on the phone or by email or whatever, but I'll gladly take them. Next slide. So real quick, wanted to, for those who don't understand, our membership dues structure is, you do have to pay dues to be a member of our organization. We capture those dues throughout our various registration process. If you look at the chart at the bottom, for those who haven't seen before, this was a chart that was approved back in June 2018 by the board of directors at that time. And in flexibility and understanding from the most recent board of directors, both in 2020 and 21, 21, 22, and then now this season, they've exercised some flexibility to freeze dues. And just wanted to illustrate that there. You can see it throughout this, and we're going to cover this later, but just wanted to give a better understanding of everyone is we have had the due structure mapped out and publicized for a number of years, and it's continually a thing that the board monitors and wants to be sharing forthright with membership. Next slide. So as I mentioned, membership dues, the method of payments, they can be paid in full during registration, or they can be paid by check. If you're paying by check, you do have to reach out to the NWBA prior. There's a different information we have to provide you to complete the registration. And then last but not least, there are a number of teams, and this availability is there for those that are looking to make a bulk purchase of individual memberships. For instance, I know there's various teams that might sponsor all their non-athletes or their coaches and team rep and all of them. And they are able to make payment for all of those, and then those individuals can go register on their own again. But again, you have to reach out to us prior to registration to have that option available to you. Next slide. So this one I want to cover off if we're going to focus first on the left-hand side of the slide. And for those who are not familiar, prior to COVID, we utilized a early registration period and an open registration period. It shows there the two different periods and dues increase that we imposed after the early registration period was over. If you notice in 18 and 19 and 19 and 20, those dates were typically in the August-September timeframe. For the 2022-23 season, we are looking to implementing the early and open registration period again, getting back to a more normal season and normal operating for us. There's still some flexibility that the board exercised in regards to the dates being a little bit later than I think previously used, and understanding that that rate increase stayed consistent with the last year in 19 and 20 when utilized. Again, registering early, it helps us, it helps you as a team. You're probably looking to operate as a team and start up practices and other activities, and you need to register, and we're going to get into that later. So really, these dates, hopefully, you can mark them down. We blast them out if you've checked your email or checked our social media or anything this afternoon, but they will be out and available for you to reference later. Next slide. And then the last one on membership dues I want to cover is for those that don't understand, the divisional and conference dues are established by the divisions and conferences. The NWBA does not determine those. Again, we're going back to divisions self-governing themselves. Same things with dues structure that they might impose. I will say, again, last couple of years, the division leadership exercised their right to waive or reduce at times some of the dues over the last 2 years. But for the 2022 and 23 season, most of them have looked to fully return to pre-COVID dues structure that they implemented, and they're outlined there per division or conference. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Carrie.
Hi everyone, thanks Brandon. We're going to talk a little bit about the early registration and the prize packages that they're giving away. So teams that will complete their registration in the time frame of July 19th through August 4th will be eligible to win one of the following prize pack giveaways. There will be 9 winners selected at random, and the prize packs are the first one prize package. There's going to be 2 of those given away. That's 6 molten basketballs and ball bag. The prize package number 2, which 3 of those will be given away, are 4 molten basketballs. And prize package number 3, 4 of those will be given away, are 2 molten basketballs. Again, you must be registered by August 4th in order for your team to be eligible for these. And as Brandon stated earlier, details on the individual registration giveaway were announced today on the NWBA website, so you can check it out on there. Next slide, please. So this gives you a little bit of information on where you can find the team registration locations on the NWBA website. If you look on the main page, there's a big bold headline that says team registration open now. Then if you go up to the members tab, in the drop down box, you'll see a registration tab. You can click on that and then follow it over to team registration. And you can also type in www.nwba.org/team registration to get to those. Next slide, please. So for team registration, your steps in the process are going to be step number 1, you want to gather your team registration information. As Brandon stated before, if you're paying dues via a check, please contact the NWBA prior to your registration. Step 2, complete entry for your 2022-23 team registration. And you can also complete entry for multiple teams at one time. Example, if you have a Division I and II team or a Division I team and a juniors team, you can complete those all at the same time when you're doing your team registration online. Next step, or next slide, please. Step number 3, you're going to check your email for confirmation email and automatic reminders that will be sent to you. So for the adult Division II and III teams only, you will get a second email not shown. You'll have to see it on the next slide, is something else that you'll follow up with once you get that registration going. Next slide, please. So step 4, for the adult Division II and III teams only, you must complete a roster form and a letter of intent season review form. That must be submitted when you get that second email from the NWBA. That will go to your division commissioners and so forth to review, and then follow up will be from there. Next slide, please. At least 60 days prior to the NWBA annual assembly, teams must be registered for the current season, and the respective team representative and voting delegate must have a verified, complete current season NWBA non-athlete individual membership registration. So that also includes a past background check and your current completed safe sport training in order to be eligible to vote. Next slide, please. So in terms of a certificate of insurance request, all NWBA registered members or individual team affiliates are eligible for insurance coverage. The insurance coverage is necessary for practice location, fundraising events, and competitions such as your games or tournaments. Just as an update, the NWBA insurance coverage will not include liability and accident claims related to COVID-19, regardless of the timing, return to play protocols, or government mandate. In terms of the incident and injury form, you would have to complete the following form and/or injury if it occurs at an NWBA practice, event, or competition, and return the forms to the team rep or event sanction holder and send it to Brandon as well. Please make sure you send it to him, and you can access those forms on the nwba.org website /general apps forms in case you're wondering where the location is. Next slide, please. Team forms in terms of classification. So the team reviewer is going to need to use the following forms to follow procedures for the classification process for their athletes and teams. All forms below are available on the website, the NWBA website. So you're going to need a classification roster. So all team reviewers must fill out a classification roster form for their respective team. Team reviewers must obtain approval and signatures of team reviewers from 2 opposing teams and their team reviewer. And a third team reviewer may be consulted if approval or signature is not received from one of the first 2 team reviewers. Completed and signed classification rosters should be submitted to Brandon McBean at his email, which is brandonmcbean@nwba.org, within 72 hours of approval. At such time as 2 team reviewers have agreed to the proposed classification for each player on the roster. Team reviewers that do not submit approved rosters may be fined $200 and/or deemed ineligible for postseason play. And you can find that in the NWBA policy and procedures. The classification worksheet can be used by team reviewers to organize their players' classifications and rationales for discussion with other team reviewers or notes on why they chose a specific classification for a player. Then you have the classification roster. And that can be used to keep track of your team and opposing team's classification points during the game. Just try to make sure to register your team early in the season to ensure that you have everybody set, because we know that there's been issues in the past with last minute classifications at nationals and so forth. So try to get it done as soon as you possibly can. Next slide, please. All right, we're on to individual registration. So individual registration includes the following individual membership categories. First one is athlete members. Those are individuals who register as a competitive athlete and are eligible for competition in wheelchair basketball. The second individual registration is for coach members, and those are individuals who register as active coaches and who are certified by the NWBA or are certified as active coaches by the NWBA. Then you have official members. Official members are individuals who register as officials with the NWBA and who are certified as officials to officiate wheelchair basketball games. The next level is team representative and the voting delegate members. The team representative and voting delegate members are those individuals who are a team leader, the liaison to the NWBA national office, have the leadership and/or recognizes the voting delegate for their team. The next level is the team support staff members, and those are individuals that support the NWBA team in at least one of the categories: statistician, medical professional, team classification reviewer, equipment manager, administrator, personal care attendant, or an other that wasn't identified in that. Then you have a Hall of Fame member, and those are individuals who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then event director, sanction holder, and those are the members that will plan the sanctioned event, so a certified or sanctioned NWBA event. Next slide, please. So the option for registering someone else is only for parents registering a minor participant under the 18 years of age, and this is a registration note that's required information. Individuals who have more than one responsibility, such as a coach and player, a team representative and a team reviewer, or a committee member and a player, should include all the roles and positions that apply during a non-athlete registration. Athletes that also serve in non-athlete roles should complete both an adult athlete registration and non-athlete registration. Only one entry for athlete registration is required for athletes rostered on multiple teams. For example, if an athlete is participating with an adult division and women's division team, they should only submit one adult athlete registration and include both teams. An athlete participating with a prep and varsity team should submit only one junior athlete registration and include both teams. And then athletes participating with a junior division and an adult team should submit only one junior athlete registration and include both teams. So you're going to want to select the appropriate team, and if your team is not noted, contact your team representative. It's not on the drop-down list. Next slide, please. So in terms of accessing your individual registration info and direct registration links, you will go on the NWBA website, go on to the Members tab, and then click down to Individual Registration. Next slide. Step one is you're going to select the individual activating the membership. Only allowed to self-register. Minors, your parent or guardian can register for you. The next step is your basic contact information. This will be saved to Sports Engine profile and assist with pre-populating info on registration. And then the next step is going to be to complete your NWBA waiver, code of conduct, safe sport, concussion info, and training acknowledgement. Important info is in that item, so please read it, understand it, or ask questions if needed. Then for individual registration, you will go on to the bottom of the NWBA website where the Sport Engine is and sign in. That's where you can start the registration. Just a little side note, speaking from previous issues with some of my team members, they have signed in with multiple emails and forget their passwords and so forth. So please, and I know this is going to come in another slide, please make sure they're using the original email and password that they've used in previous years to register, or else it's going to show them as new, and then you'll have, verification of athletes and so forth to go through. Next slide. The next step is you're going to check your email once you've completed those registration steps, and it's going to send you some automatic reminders. The emails shared slightly differ from membership versus team registration. And it also varies based on if you're an adult athlete or a junior athlete. Next slide, please. So consideration of eligibility. Please ensure you have reviewed and completed the necessary information and process for player eligibility with the NWBA. This information and process should be completed prior to completing the athlete registration. If you have any questions, you can visit the website and look under the player eligibility Q&A just to verify. Then if there is a player transfer, an application for a player transfer is required for any player considering playing on a different team than the one they played on the previous season. This must be completed under the player transfer request, and no other forms will be considered, so you must complete this form. And then you will be contacted via email once your transfer has been reviewed and a decision has been made. And you can find that form under the website on nwba.org, player transfer, for more information. Please note also that the NWBA policies and procedures and division guidelines for more information on player transfer is available for the 2022-23 season. Next. So, junior division. The forms listed below are used for operations within the junior division of the NWBA. These forms are needed to complete the entry for junior athlete registration. So if you go on to nwba.org/junior division, you can find more information there. You will need a high school verification form, annual update all athletes in high school, only new athletes that did not participate in the previous season in 2021-22. You would need a junior minimum disability form, that's a one-time submission, and the birth certificate, which is also a one-time submission. These athletes will be reviewed by the Junior Division Executive Committee for consideration of eligibility within the division. The PrEP exemption form, which is an annual update, all players 13 and up still in high school with significant neurological, such as muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, and/or cognitive disabilities, cerebral palsy, traumatic brain injury, spina bifida with hydrocephalus or shunt malfunctions, which affect mobility, coordinated movement, strength, and endurance. So that would be the PrEP exemption form. And then you have the player exemption form, which is also an annual request. And that is an application for player exemption application for the NWBA Junior Division. This application allows athletes in the junior division and exceptions for consideration of additional years of eligibility. Next slide, please. So now we're into the education and training section. As stated in a previous slide, every team is required to have a team reviewer. So all teams for all divisions of play must have at least one person certified as a team reviewer, except for prep teams in the junior division. There is no cost to become a team reviewer, and you can find more information on the website, nwba.org/team reviewer, or view the slide on educational and training, the update forthcoming on host learning management software. So then there's also the floor officials test. Any individual wanting to register as a floor official must complete all requirements of the non-athlete membership registration process and the annual floor officials test. The information for this test will be shared by the Rules Committee and NWBA when available and directly to those registering as floor officials. So updates forthcoming on coaching certification, and then there is some old material still available on nwba.org/coach certification. Next slide, please. Now we're going into safety. So policies, there's the Minor Athlete Abuse Prevention Policy, MAP, and a background screen. The NWBA safety policies information can be found on the website. And in that section, it will cover the policies, the U.S. Center for Safe Sports centralized disciplinary database, training info, which is required and optional, minor consent form templates per the minor athlete abuse prevention policies. Teams inclusive of minor athletes should collect appropriate consent forms. Each team can use their own, but templates are posted on the NWBA website if you need some. So as you know, and we stated earlier, Safe Sport is required yearly, whether it's a new Safe Sport certification that you have to go through or a refresher course. Next slide, please. So for the quality control system under safety, we want to confirm that only current season NWBA registered and rostered junior athletes, adult athletes, and non-athletes are involved with your team and/or an NWBA sanctioned event you are attending. So members that are non-team affiliated can go on to the website, teams that are registered, and then registered floor officials. And if you go on to the slide, for those of you that can't see it, there are links on there. So you can go under teams and then go down to teams by division and find more information there. Next slide. For participants, adult participants required to have a verified complete NWBA athlete and/or non-athlete registration 10 days prior to their first competition at a sanctioned event. So please make sure that all of your athletes are registered at least 10 days prior to their first game that they're competing in for the season. And that includes NWBA staff, employees, and interns, NWBA members, junior athletes, adult athlete, non-athlete, board of directors, coaches, officials, team support staff, manager, team classification reviewer, personal care attendant, all of the above, the classifier, the team representative, committee leadership, divisional and conference leadership, the event director, and sanction holder, your local organization committee, the USA national team staff, then the NWBA independent contractors with regular contact or authority, and vendors with regular contact that are going to be at an NWBA event, especially if it is more than one. So all participants are required to complete that. Next slide, please. So in terms of your active roster, if you go onto the website, you will be able to see once your athletes are registered and they have passed their safe sport and their registration has gone completely through the NWBA, you'll be able to find the active roster on the NWBA website. If you go on to teams, then you can go down to the division and find the team. Those athletes that are listed on that page are the ones that are current and up to date and good standing. Next slide, please. All right.
I think I'm jumping in there.
Are you
Gary.
jumping in? Sorry,
Yeah.
I lost my notes. I was going too fast. Thanks, Brandon.
And Nia, if you could go back one slide real quick, I just want to make sure. For those of you that are familiar with the rosters, this year the non-athletes will be showing up on this homepage. I know in previous years we utilized, if you look up there where there's a little roster on there, and we utilize the roster tab, we will be showing fully compliant non-athletes on this page. So you'll be able to see the three lists if it's an adult team, such as here, adult athletes, junior athletes that are supposed to be rostered on your adult team, and the non-athletes that are fully compliant. And I'll just add one more thing and we can move off this is I think one of the common things, and we'll get into it later, is I hear from a lot of team reps and a lot of individuals that they say, oh, an athlete has told me they registered. If they are not showing on this page, they have missed a step in the process. And most of the time it's safe sport related, i.e. they haven't taken their safe sport training. You know, we're glad to assist, but I would just definitely utilize this as this is what you as a team rep need to utilize, and this is what we've educated our event sanction holders. They need to utilize just these rosters and only these rosters for individuals that can compete in their events. So it's super critical that you reference this above all other rosters. Next slide, Nia. I know we mentioned, you know, a number of things here. We have resources available on our resource center that hopefully can help you with either how-to videos, how to register, which we will be updating again this year to kind of give them a facelift, to team guidebook for the team reps on this call. There's a checklist literally in that guidebook that you can mark off all the necessary action steps you need to do for a season, to a variety of different things that are available in the resource center. So definitely check that out. Next slide. So this was kind of stemming off, and I really want to drive this home. I hope your understanding is super critical when Carrie was touching base on the roster, and I was as well. Only individuals that are registered and showing on your active roster can be competing in any NWBA sanctioned event or should be actively participating in any of your team activities. So this includes when we say team activities, if you're having your first practice and someone's not showing up on the roster, they need to be registered and they shouldn't be at practice because they likely haven't made themselves aware of the minor abuse prevention policy. They maybe have not taken a safe sport training. They maybe have not been background checked. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things, I don't know if Gary used this, but it's something that I think you've heard us say over the last number of years. The board stands behind this, all of us staff behind this, is we're trying to foster a an environment of safety, a culture of safety for anyone participating in our sport. So to do that, there's steps to get someone to participate, but those steps are becoming registered, compliant, and trained. And looking at a couple of these other ones here is, that registration also falls along the lines of any coaches or team reps, or, even if that statistician, that I'll just say team dad or mom that sits on the end of the bench, they're going to need to be registered as a non-athlete and do all of the steps necessary to register as that. And it's critical as you take all those steps, because the only individuals or games that are between teams and individuals that are all registered will be recognized competition by us and by the division leadership. And that's super critical, as we all know, is understand the time and the commitment for all of you guys traveling. We're not, unfortunately, down the street to the next team, so there's a large commitment there, and we would hate for any competition not to be recognized, and for that competition to not be recognized, I know would be very significant. So just make sure you're really taking the action steps that we're talking about here and being proactive in registration. And then also, for those of you that, are looking to host an event, I know we recently held a webinar in regards to event sanction application process, but those event directors, just as much as you as team reps, should be holding each other accountable. When you're attending an event, you should be looking at those other teams' rosters. I know it's the event director's responsibility, but you don't want to show up to an event, and I hear it from a number of teams, and I actually applaud them when they're going to an event and they say, hey, these three teams, Brandon, their rosters don't look good. And there's a concern. I said that you should bring that up with the event director. So just want to, protect all of you, protect our athletes, protect our sport. So next slide. Knowing these webinars, because I haven't seen any chat come through the chat, I wanted to put some frequently asked questions in here for you all, hopefully to prompt some questions. Might be hinting at what the next slide is. But Carrie kind of mentioned one of them is a lot of individuals, I get it, you might not be logging into Sports Engine all the time or the website. A lot of your athletes might be, they sign on one time a year and they register and they're playing with your team. That's awesome. If they've taken the necessary action, that's all they need to do. However, they might forget what that login is. And we definitely ask them to really try to attempt to recover that profile. I will say every time the individual creates a new profile and has an old profile, they don't talk to each other. And why that's important, just for all of you, is the classification. For an individual's history on classification is maybe attached to that old profile, and thus when they register to a new team, we then have to either transfer that information over or ask the individual to merge those two accounts, which I am going to put in the chat real quick. Merging accounts is something the individual has to do. Unfortunately, Sports Engine, it's a platform. Other NGBs like USA Hockey or other ones in town here utilize it. So we don't have all the rights of the data and all the information in there. That's your personal data. So you have to seek out and make that request to merge your accounts if you do to Sports Engine directly. So super critical. Not to use any examples, but we do have some individuals upwards of 7 profiles, and it becomes really difficult when they're registering again and using a new profile. And so we really ask you, if you can, I would love if you could chat those team reps that are on here. You'll get brownie points with Brandon if you can merge just a handful of your athletes' accounts this year. But next one is Sports Engine. It's technology. it kind of has a preference of browsers. If you use Google Chrome or Firefox, it seems to work a little bit better than like Microsoft Edge or a couple of the other internet browsers. So I'd encourage you to utilize those. SafeSport. You're going to go through all this registration and you're like, hey, I just want to get the SafeSport training. For those who've registered before, we do send detailed information and instructions how to complete that. I know Carrie covered off on a little bit. There is information on our safety tab on our website, but immediately following your registration, you will get information on how to complete it in a step-by-step process. And if you need more assistance, you can definitely reach out on that one. And then the last one, talked about it a couple times. It's probably the most common thing that we hear. Hey, I'm not showing on the roster, or an athlete told me they registered last practice, and they're not showing on the roster. What do I do? Well, I would say first make sure, and I would ask you as team reps. That's where, I think some of the best practices I've heard is some of them have at their first team meeting, they're going to sit down and have a computer or computers and all register, and the team rep can monitor, make sure all the steps are taken. Because 9 times out of 10, there's something that wasn't completed on their end, and then doesn't allow us to add them to the roster. There is a step and a verification by us with SafeSport, so it isn't immediately that they're going to be pre-populated on a roster. So I do want to state that. Obviously, SafeSport, once you've completed registration, and then SafeSport, we do need to have a verification of if it's a background check for a non-athlete or a SafeSport, or if it's a team reviewer. So various things like that we need to take action to verify on our end. But I can tell you that we are doing it very frequently, and that does help if you register early. When we're doing it frequently and you're not coming up against maybe an individual that's looking to get to their first practice or game, and understand those situations come up, as much as you can plan ahead and reduce the number would be great. So next slide.
Thank you to our presenters for sharing that information. Thank you, Brandon and Carrie. We will now be moving to the general questions and answers portion of the webinar series, like Brandon had mentioned. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions or type a question in the chat, and we will be happy to answer them.
Hi, Brandon. I just wanted to add, Brandon, you did a great job. If your athlete falls off of your roster, because that was the big question last year, if you're a junior coach, if your athlete turns 18 anytime within this year, they will fall off your roster because they are not SafeSport compliant. And if you're, because of COVID, we know that people started taking SafeSport in January or March, right before nationals. So we're encouraging everybody to register. And even if your SafeSport certificate doesn't expire until like March of next year, please redo SafeSport right now. So everybody's starting with a July or August date, so that none of your athletes or non-athletes fall off your roster throughout the year, because we will pull you off the roster for those reasons. So just remember that.
Yeah, and you can take the SafeSport training prior to your 18th birthday. So there is an option, and it is provided during registration for any individual 17 and younger. So I definitely encourage you guys to invite those that are applicable and that know that they're receiving that information, and encourage them to do that. I think everyone here, I know everyone on this call wants to have a safe, fun environment for our athletes and our coaches and our classifiers and our officials, and so educating early on this space is obviously a great thing. So, thanks, Doug. Other questions?
Hello, this is Dee. I just wanted to make sure you guys were saying there's a way that I can pay for the group individual registration.
Yep. So Dee, you can shoot me a note the process is, and it is reach out to me, and I'll work with you individually to process a invoice for that collective group of individuals, and then I will actually issue something to allow you to register individually without payment being received. So, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And super common thing. Like I will tell you, the intercollegiate division, a lot of the colleges do it. Some of the, I know, rehab medical setting teams, they do it for their non-athletes. So if you're looking for an option to support, and rather than if you need to internally do exchange of monies, we can simplify that for you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Any other questions? No question's a bad question. We'd rather have it now. I'm sure someone else is thinking of it too.
This is Dee again. I do have another question. If I'm going to host an event, you might have said it and I just skipped it, but how ahead of time do I have to do the forms and all that?
Yep. So at minimum, and I'm going to stick it in the chat here in a second for the recording for the webinar series session we did just a week ago in regards to event sanctioning, but it's 15 days minimum in advance that you need to submit that. Within 15 days, we do have the option not to approve that event.
Okay.
And mainly the intent there is we need to allow you and work with the event director to assist you to ensure our minor abuse prevention policies are implemented, our safe sport code is followed, i.e. all the individuals coming to that event can be vetted and in a proper time. Because the one biggest obstacle there out of it is getting individuals safe sport trained does take time, even if they're registering within that window, and background checks getting processed in time, which do take time. So that's really why in our policies and procedures as an organization, 15 days or more. So as early as you can get them submitted. But
Okay.
just dropped a link in there. Indeed, it's the last one. I just moved it up today. So if you click on it and you see sanctioned events, you can definitely, I encourage you to watch that. Tina and Doug Gardner did a great job of going over that content. So.
Brandon, I had a question.
Anyone else?
Yes, Brandon, this is David. I had a question about the team classification for junior and prep players.
Yep, the team reviewer.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking? Sorry, Dave, I couldn't.
Yeah, I was just checking to make sure that they had to have that information.
Yep. So each team, regardless of all divisions except prep, needs to have one individual that at least certified as a team reviewer. And super critical, as we all know, classification is kind of, it's utilized in all those divisions, and unfortunately, but we don't have every individual that is classified by a classification panel, a certified panel. And thus our operation is you're going to get preliminary classifications by other teams. You initially submit the information, a proposed classification, but then you seek out an approved status by having other team reviewers sign off on that classification at your first competition or first sanctioned event that you attend. So having said that, you need to have individuals that are certified in that space and understand it so they can sign off not only on your teams, but on other teams, individuals on classification. So, does that answer it, Dave, or do you have anything else that you wanted to ask on that? And by all means, ask away.
No, that kind of clears it up. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, I saw your question, Christina. Yeah, how you can view these slides. Um, when we when we're typically once we're done here, within 24 hours, we'll post the recording and the slides on that web page that I put in the chat box. You can go on there and you can see any of our past presentations, and they're always the recordings on there and all the slides are on there. So feel free to go on there, and like I said, I think we normally try to do it within, you know, I'll say 24 hours. We normally do it within 12 hours. So, but yeah, by all means, that'll be available for you. So, any other questions? Well, if we don't have any other questions, I just want to say before I pass it back to you, Nia, thank you, Carrie, and I applaud all of you guys for attending. I know that this is a wealth of information we went through here. Do not expect you to maybe retain it all. There's a lot of process that's covered off in here. Hopefully we educated you a little. Hopefully anyone watching this later, you have some takeaways that can help improve the process of getting your team registered or your team members registered or individuals in your community, if they're officials, if they're event directors or whomever. Our really intent here is help educate you to register early and often and ensure that you understand the process. And then from that, hopefully then you can go and enjoy the play, because that's why we're all here, right? We're here to enjoy the sport of wheelchair basketball, not sit on a computer. But this is a necessary step to get there. So appreciate everyone for sitting on this, and Nia, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Brandon. And again, if you have any questions that pop up now or later, feel free to email Brandon, his email right here on the screen. I'll give you guys a few minutes to write that down if need be. All right. Thank you all again for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this installment of the NWBA webinar series presented by ABC Medical. This video recording of tonight's session will be posted on the link listed here by the end of this week, or like Brandon said, within 24 to 12 hours. Our next webinar series, titled Navigating Team and Individual Membership Registration, will be hosted on, Starting a Team will be hosted on August 10th at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. We hope you have a great evening and a successful season. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.